Hey, what's up, guys? It's February 10th. Yep, it's February 10th. And I'm going to review two of my favorite albums. I get to review two of my favorite albums. I love these records. Love these bands. Dinosaur Jr. and Sonic Youth, two of my favorite bands. They have a lot of great albums. I'm going to start with reviewing my two favorites. Dinosaur Jr. I got to see live a bunch because they would play. They're from where I grew up, Massachusetts. So they would play the Middle East every year. Sonic Youth, unfortunately, I never got to see live, but I love their records. These albums came out around the same time. Sonically, they have a lot in common. If you enjoy one of these records, I highly suspect you'll enjoy the other record because they're equally great in my mind. I think they're both perfect records. I guess I'll start with Dinosaur Jr. Dinosaur Jr. was originally called Dinosaur. Then they had to change their name because there was already a band called The Dinosaur, so they changed it to Dinosaur Jr. Lou Barlow and Jay Mascis were in a punk band, like a hardcore punk band called Deep Wound before Dinosaur. So they already kind of had records because the two kind of creative, the people who are writing the songs. I mean, they don't have this Murph, the great drummer, yet, but they have you know they've already been making records. Dinosaur, their first record, is good, but it does not in any way prepare you for what You're Living All Over Me is, which to me is a masterpiece. This is one of my favorite records. Similarly, dissimilarly, Sonic Youth I think started out pretty great. Evol, Sex is Violence. I don't think they approach the kind of craziness of like the '69 Tom Violence on Sister. It's more restrained, more refined. They're still playing lots of off-key chords. They're doing weird tunings. There's lots of droney, aggressive stuff. But Sister is the first record where you can hear they're at like the halfway point between the hardcore punk and the more polished kind of alt rock they'll get into with Goo and Dirty, which are also perfect records. But I'm going to review these two records because they came out around the same time. Lee Ronaldo, the guitar player for Sonic Youth, Thurston obviously plays guitar as well, sings backing vocal on he sings backing vocal on Little Furry Things. So they're like friends. They're both in the late 80s, around the time that I was born. Both of these records I think were released shortly before I was born. From Northeast punk bands with similar influences. These influences include Husker Du, fantastic band I need to review. There's like Sabbath influence on Dinosaur Jr. specifically, and early experimental kind of art punk bands like the Velvets, like Pure Ubu, Television. These are all influential. I think the last review I did of the Ramones, it's like, yeah, the Ramones were going and seeing Television. That's why I reviewed the Television before the Ramones. Because it doesn't sound anything like Television, but anyway, trying in my stupid way to give you a history of not only the music that I love, but how it connects and why I love all of this music and consider it all a piece. Anyway, we're going to start with You're Living All Over Me. I love this record, start to finish. I recommend you just listen to it. Before you listen to anybody critique an album, listen to the album yourself. If you don't, you will view the album through the perception of some other person that's told you how to think about this album, which is antithetical to the way you should consume art. Um, if you're viewing it through the lens of a critic, you're not having a spontaneous reaction to the art and judging it for yourself. This, I will attempt to tell you why I love this album. Little Furry Things opens this record, and now we're nuts. Now we're nuts. Okay, there's lots of static and wobbliness. Both of these records use that wobbly. I don't know like what wah pedal guitar combination gets this wobbly effect. It's utilized in both of these records, as is static. Like Merzbow, static. Like noise. So these bands are often called noise. They're called noise punk, noise rock, noise lo-fi, whatever. They're genre-fied in a bunch of ways to explain the fact that they utilize static noise distortion in a way that is very upfront and impossible to ignore. I believe they have some of that music concrete influence, which I will explain. That's what I reviewed last. Music concrete, not Ramones. That was second to last. Oh wait, the third one's always the real connection. Anyway, Little Furry Things starts with screaming aggressive guitar with that wobbly thing I'm talking about. That's the first thing you hear is the wobble. So it shouldn't be difficult when I refer to the wobble. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is the first notes on this record. Just screaming distorted guitar with kind of yelling, and then it goes into this smooth melodic verse that I find really beautiful. That gravity falls away from me, I guess I'll crawl. And that I think is really cool because like right up front you get the dynamics of this band, which is they can do this hardcore punk kind of screaming at you, but really Jay Mascis's voice as well as Barlow's voice, they have this like vulnerable, earnest quality, this sincerity, and this vulnerability. So it's distinct from the earlier hardcore punk bands, right? Like I reviewed Fear. Like Fear is just like, this is like, no, I'm emotionally telling you about what I'm going through. And that to me is more relatable and more beautiful, which is why I listen to these records more than the just straight hardcore punk records. Because there's just more dynamically going on. I guess it goes into a section that's, I guess, a bridge. I don't really understand when I'm describing these songs what the bridges are, but moves through different sections is usually how I say it. It goes from the pretty kind of bouncy gravity falls away from me into these more composed sections that build to euphoric short jams. This happens on a ton of different songs on this record, including the first song. And after this short, euphoric, shreddy guitar, it's back into the pretty bouncy verse part. And that's over. Then the next song is Cracked, which sounds very hardcore punk, sounds very informed. This song sounds very much like a Husker song to me. The lyrics I love. Come on, babe, and rescue me. Come on, come rescue me. There's a guitar line that's quickly a swath of the pulse, the static pulse, with raking guitar distortion. It's like Mascis is raking the guitar to create this wall of a thing that sounds like a Merzbow pulse demon. It sounds like just like a wall of impenetrable static. noise. When I say static, I literally mean static. I mean when you turn a TV off and you hear static, that's what this sounds like. Um, and then it develops into a great little guitar solo. Jay Mascis is an incredible guitarist. Um, I plead the case. I need the space. I let it wait. The melody verse, and then the solo, and then there's like a chord battle. There's often this like kind of chord battle that happens between Lou and Jay, and then it's this rocking, less disoriented, back to "Come on, babe, come on, set me free, come on, rescue me." That phrase that he was repeating earlier. Then there's a short drum fill. The drums on this are so tight. The drumming on this record, apparently Jay Mascis was driving Murph insane because he wanted so specifically to tell him exactly what the drum parts were. And you can hear that precision. The way that they just like cut one thing and go straight to another thing. There's no room for like fills. There's no room for groove. It's like everything is very carefully constructed on this record. Sludge Feast, to me, this is where you hear the Sabbath. They loved Sabbath. Their early stuff sounds kind of Sabbathy. This sounds like a classic Iommi riff. Then there's Mascis doing the distorted, raking, staticky thing. And then the verse is this sweet, melodic thing, but rhythmically it's this disjointed, kind of awkward thing underneath. But the phrases the guitars are playing are tuneful, and I find quite pretty. I'm waiting, please come back. Then there's a breakdown, and it's just guitar picking. Sludgy, Iommi style soloing, fantastic soloing. This is some of the best guitar soloing on the record. Back into the I'm waiting. After the verse is over, next song. The King starts with chugging drums for a second, and then very quickly it's a pretty disjointed, picking up on that like surfy garage punk chords, then goes into faster composed part that usually builds into these euphoric peaks. And you get that. You get the little alternate section, and then halfway through the song, you haven't had a lyric yet. He starts singing. Nowhere to collapse the lung. Breathes the doubt in everyone. Nowhere to collapse the lung. Breathes the doubt in everyone. He repeats this twice, and then he repeating it twice. Those are the lyrics to this song. Ends with distorted raking, and a short little hint of a guitar solo, and then it's over. The next song is Raisins. I don't know. It's Raisins spelled wrong, or it's something like Raisins. Anyway, straightforward, melodic, hardcore punk. And then, about halfway through, hits this lo-fi, taking like a quiet picking section, and then it goes back into the chugging, hardcore, staticky punk verse, which sounds... I think they develop it. I think they actually play it with more abandon the second time. But I think having heard that pretty little guitar picking part in the middle is why it's more powerful when they return to the theme of the first verse melody. And then Jay Mascis shreds your brain with amazing guitar playing. He's one of the best guitarists. Tar Pit, I love. It's slower, more melodic. Although it's still pretty disoriented for melodic punk, but just has a great riff. Thought I knew you, stuck out my hand. You bit, wish I could understand. Stay inside and pull me out of space. Tread me sprinkling, stay and pave my faith. Then he just says pave my faith over and over again as a refrain, which I think is a beautiful lyric. Uh, and increasingly wild guitar is building as he's saying this, and it ends on a high note, I think, with pay my faith, and then sets you up perfectly for what I think is the greatest song on the record. I think this is the greatest Dinosaur Jr. song. I think this is one of the greatest songs ever written. This is way more melodic. It's based around the bass melody for the most part, and they kind of are reserved in the way that they're playing chords on the guitars. So it's like the most fulfilling, pretty song on the record to me. The most relatable emotionally. And the composed section, that I'm not going to do it. When it goes into the composed part, it does that for a few measures, and it sounds like it's building, 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 till it's like, it just can't stop. He literally says, just can't stop, and then it's, and then the most blissful 30 seconds that are on this entire record is the guitar solo after the build of the composed part of In a Jar. And then, as soon as it hits a nice peak, it is very methodically back into In a jar where you fed me, all I could do is lick your hand. In a jar, scars are plain to see. Somehow I hope you know I'll understand. I just want to read the lyrics to this song. This is one of the greatest songs ever written to me. I'll be grazing by your window, please come pat me on the head. Just want to find out what you're nice to me for. When I look up, don't think I don't know about all the scabs you dread. It's so hard to stomach the gore. I don't know, you don't have the patience to peel them off no more. In a jar where you fed me, all I could do was lick your hand. In a jar, your scars are plain to see. I hope somehow you know I'll understand. Yeah, it's a fantastic song. Love In a Jar. After In a Jar, you get the two Lou Barlow songs. The first song, Lose, sounds like a pretty typical Dinosaur Jr. song. It sounds like hardcore punk. Kind of sounds like the Deep Wound stuff. It's just good. It's like a good song off New Day Rising by Husker Du. It's like just well executed punk. I didn't know Barlow wrote this song. I did know Barlow wrote Paleto because I've listened to Sebado and I've listened to what Barlow does, which is his thing. Is actually music concrete, what I was talking about before. He starts with like ukulele he's playing, I think. It's very sparse, although there's noises that come in and out. And I assume it's Lou singing. I'm guilty, my stomach always hurts. It's like a folk song. It's kind of like a preview of what you're going to get with Lou's solo stuff. Not solo stuff, his other bands. Although he has solo stuff. But there's bursts of static, and then new acoustic figures, I think mostly, again, on ukulele. And then the folk drone with the strings manipulated electronics builds into this repetitive, haunting melody. It becomes quite dark, and that's what you're left with. That's the end of the record. That's the end of the original pressing of this record. The version I got of this record has the Cure cover as the last song, Just Like Heaven, which I prefer to the original. I love the way that they play like the production parts with guitar solos. I just the quick, dirty punk interpretation of this song is so beautiful to me. Such a sincere song. I think it's my favorite Cure song, maybe. I do love other Cure songs, but this is one of their best songs. This is a very faithful interpretation of it. Robert Smith used to throw it on when he was DJing. Uh, it's a great version of a great song. Sister by Sonic Youth is my favorite Sonic Youth record. It's where they're kind of still have the hardcore punk, but you can hear that they're becoming more complex, they're becoming more melodic. But for me, by the time you get to Dirty, by the time you get. It's. Daydream Nation, the next record, is what most people would be their favorite record, and that's what they would review and tell you to listen to. I think that this record is actually where you hear them falling apart and becoming this melodic, beautiful thing. Which is why I do reviews, to state how I slightly disagree with basically everybody else, because we're all just basic bitches. We'll just listen to basic bitch radio. It's up there in playlists. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Capitalism is beautiful, isn't it? Schizophrenia. One of my favorite songs ever. The lyrics to this song are incredibly meaningful to me. Her schizophrenia is bringing me home. If you've dealt with mental illness. But also it's referencing, it's like, I went to see an old friend of mine. His sister came over, she was out of her mind. She said, Jesus had a twin who knew nothing about its sin. She was laughing like crazy at the trouble I'm in. Her eyes were dancing, she is insane. Brother says she's just a bitch with a golden chain. I'm not going to bring up the actual lyrics, but I do know them. When she's saying Jesus had a twin who knew nothing about sin, Lilith, she's referring to Gnostic Christianity. This person that's crazy actually knows how direct religious experience works. And the Gnostics for the Christians, the Kabbalah for the Jews, the Sufis for the Islam. Hinduism was never codified, so Hinduism was always wild and differently interpreted. The mystical branches of religions that encourage direct experience of transcendence and direct communication with God, that's what this crazy lady is telling him about. She's not so crazy. Yeah. Schizophrenia builds into this plodding, chugging, rhythmic section that's just like... I'm not going to like a cappella do anything. It builds and builds and builds into these really cool sections that have nothing to do with the initial song. And then it just becomes this like churning, rhythmic, kind of new composition of these off-key chords. They use a lot of alternate tunings, so a lot of the chords and stuff that are on this record are not normal. And I don't just mean drop D. I mean like out of tune. I mean like they're using completely alternate tunings and instruments that don't sound normal. But sound beautiful to me. They sound very unique. Because they issue convention and use these alternate tunings. Figure out new ways to reinterpret rock and roll. When you're dealing with a medium like hardcore punk, you can get pretty weird with how you mess with people's ideas of rhythms, tones, and melodies. There's kind of no rules. And Schizophrenia is a great example of how you can build it to like a progressive rock song with a blissful peak. And it's still punk, sort of. Anyway, the after Schizophrenia is Catholic Block. One of my favorite songs, period. One of my favorite Sonic Youth songs. I think I just need to read the lyrics to Catholic Block because it connects so much to how I feel mentally. Got a Catholic block inside my head. I let it go to work, bring it all back home. It serves you right, and I can motor down. You gotta earn your freedom, get it on your own. I just live forever. There just is no end. I just trust the oppression like I trust your friends. Got a Catholic block inside my head. I let it play around. Iron to gold. Alchemy. Come back to me a while. Then it goes into this wild composed part that turns into a blissful peak and then returns to the verse structure, which is I got a Catholic block around my head. I got a Catholic block. It's blood orange red. I got a Catholic block. Do you like to fuck? I got a Catholic block. I guess I'm out of luck. As somebody who has struggled with guilt and weird remnants of Catholic stuff and just mental stability. Opening up with Schizophrenia Catholic block, it's like, oh my god, you've just explained to me like what I'm going through that I didn't know how to articulate in these two songs. And then you've also just given me these beautiful sound sculptures underneath it. Anyway, after Catholic block builds into a really like menacing rock out. And then after these two songs, which are very complex for Sonic Youth, especially this early, there's Beauty Lies in the Eye, which is dark, drony kind of environments with Kim reciting non-rhyming poetry. Her poetry is quite good. I love Kim's poems. I love her bass playing. I think she's very talented. Stereo Sanctity is next. Starts with 7. One person says 7. One person yells 7. Then it's chugging punk beat with a cool melody. Gets back into harmonics. They use harmonics a lot. I love the sound of harmonics. I think the reason I like Modest Mouse is because they always use harmonics. I just like the way that it sounds when you play the side of a string. I'm a sucker for it. I don't know why. Anyway, builds into wild, percussive, like drum, the screech, like guitar screech meets drum solo. Then it's over, which sets up Pipeline, which is dizzyingly fast, kind of classic hardcore punk. Great lyrics, none of them rhyme. Then building in a like tough gnarl type composed section, the drums do like a legit jazz fill over the beat. And then it's back into the dark verse, back into the wobble. The wobble on this is the same as the Little Fur Things wobble. It's how with the drony noise wall. Flesh, dirt, force field. That's what I should call the drone, flesh, dirt, force field. You already told me in the lyrics. Pacific Coast Highway, again, a dark background that's kind of calmer and a platform for Kim to recite beautiful poetry. It kind of reminds me of Patti Smith. I bet Patti Smith's probably a direct influence. I'm not a chauvinist because I'm comparing two female punk musicians that sound similar. I'm honestly reminded of Patti Smith with Kim's writing. I love Patti Smith and Kim. They're great musicians. Hotwire My Heart starts out with tuning and like noises, and then it's straightforward, almost Ramones-y. Like there's great Thurston soloing. It sounds like, or Lee soloing. I don't know who's taking solos. They both do, I think. But it sounds like they're comfy to have kind of more of a normal, just punk progression to play with. And then Hotwire My Heart refrain. They repeat, and the song's over. Cotton Crown is next. It's very drony, and then it gets into this very melodic thing for this record. Great lyrics on it. Angels are dreaming of you. They repeat a bunch. Angels are dreaming of you. Then it explodes at the end. The progression is this hardcore thing fighting with this softer, drony thing. White Cross is one of the most conventional kind of rock riff bass songs on the record, it has a breakdown interpolation that turns into a crazy build, because they all do. But there's this hardcore shuffle underneath. If you want to go to 140 in this song, 1 minute and 40 seconds, you'll hear a melody, a riff that I think Thurston, maybe Lee, repeats and then digs into, and then there's like an alternate composed section that sounds like it's based around this riff. And then Master Dick, the closer, and White Cross, honestly, too, sound like the most unrestrained this band. This band sounds like, as they go through the record, they're getting less precise, more crazy. The lyrics are more confrontational. He's saying, like, America KKK, like, I know every corner of New York, like, I know, like, it's getting to this more arrogant, kind of aggressive style lyrically, but it's still kind of detached, like an evil cousin to Pure Ubu or something. And then the breakdown section, the I know part, and then there's wild soloing. It's like barely holding together. Then it returns to the first riff, and then it's chi chichoni, and then just splaying riffs. Just Lee and Thurston splaying riffs. And that's the end of the record. It's 31. I'm supposed to do 30. I was close. Anyway, have a lovely day. If you want something to do, listen to these two records. They're pretty good.